one of the things about about sitting out in the middle of the ocean where there's, they're not in the shipping lane. They're going over parts of the ocean that people never showed up. He saw things, and one of the things he reported seeing is at night lights underneath the water following the boat. Now, there are fish that produce their own light, but they live like the angler fish. But it lives so far under, down deep in the ocean that it couldn't survive at pressures up high enough for somebody to see the light through the water. So, yeah, what was that? We don't know.
Well, I kind of have a feeling like it could even be as far as UFOs, which is not a monster. But again, aliens could classify as a monster if you look at it in certain ways. But, it's true. I mean, but it would, whatever, if it's an animal, a sea life, it could generate that much, light, even phosphorus or however it does it, to be seen like that in big patches. In fact, I remember that they showed it on public broadcast stations across the country, that their trip. And I have to tell you, those guys were brave doing that.
Oh, absolutely. When I read the book, my mother told me that when she was a kid, that she listened to the reports, because they had a shortwave radio, and Heyerdahl would give reports of their progress, and that was a big deal to sit around the radio and listen to that.
Oh yeah. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of sea life. There's even stuff in lakes and stuff like that, and like the Loch Ness Monster. And then I guess there's supposed to be one in one of our lakes too. They were talking about there's supposed to be some type of creature. I just can't remember the lake or what the creature they call it, but I remember seeing that here recently.
Well, there are lake monsters in every state. They are all over the place, and one of the things that the thing is that they're mostly the same type of animal, which the description is, a long neck, a thicker body with humps on it, a head that looks like a horse or a dog, and a long tail, and flippers. I mean, it sounds like the Loch Ness Monster. It sounds like a plesiosaur type. And these, reports are hundreds upon hundreds of years old. The natives usually, in a lot of these lakes, spoke about them before, any European settlers came in to, ruin everything. Yeah, it's fascinating. I don't take a lot of stock in the man-made lakes that claim to have these type of monsters in them. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's good for tourism.
Well, I guess it would. It would help financially the area, wouldn't it? But, again, too, where they flooded homes or took a forest area and created a lake. I can't believe there's any monsters in those. But, when you go like Crater Lake, which is extremely deep, and some of these other lakes, who knows what's at the bottom of it?
Well, and one of the things, I don't remember who I heard speculating about this, but with lake monsters in all these lakes, even some that are reservoirs, they claim to have lake monsters. We had across the United States oceans with these monsters, or these dinosaurs that swam in these oceans. You mentioned about other dimensions. Hell, I mean, why couldn't these things be ghosts? Maybe that's why we haven't been able to catch them.
It's possible, or they're in between dimensions. I don't know, but it's strange. Like Mothman, for example, changing the subject a little bit. That is reported virtually now everywhere in the country. People now, I don't know if it's because of frenzy of it being a popular subject, but I mean I've been hearing reports in Texas. I heard one in Oregon here recently. How about you? Have you been hearing anything new about Mothman?
Well, yeah, Mothman, that type of creature seems to appear before some kind of a disaster. There were reports of people seeing a Mothman-like creature, days up to 9/11. The same when there was a bridge collapse in Minneapolis. There was, allegedly people reported seeing Mothman. There was this big black bird that was seen over Chernobyl days before the meltdown there. One of the more interesting, I think, recent sightings, and Lon Strickler over at Phantoms and Monsters did a great job of covering this, was a Mothman-like creature that was reported in Chicago and the suburbs. And there were 70, 80-plus sightings over a couple-of-year period of this thing. Either people seeing it perched on, on top of a building or perched on a lamppost. A father and his son were walking through a park and saw this 7-foot-tall black man with glowing red eyes and wings, and they startled it. And when the thing, saw them, took off and flew away and just flew away. And again, there were 70, 80 plus of these sightings. There hasn't been a disaster in Chicago to correspond with all these sightings, but who knows when it shows up?
Well, that's true. I just find it, I don't know if you find it interesting, is, it's like been no attacks. Of course, and again, maybe somebody out hunting got attacked by one of these creatures and maybe killed, then we wouldn't know. But, I mean, any people have physically seen that. There hasn't been, unless I'm wrong, any reported attacks by Mothman or Thunderbird or any of these other cryptids.
Now, when it comes to Mothman, no, I have not read or heard of any attacks that a Mothman-like creature has done. When it comes to Thunderbirds, however, there have been cases of Thunderbirds picking up wildlife, not wildlife, but livestock, dogs. I think this might have been in Pennsylvania. A 12-year-old boy was outside playing, and one of these birds grabbed him by the shoulders and took off. And the boy was, thrashing about and screaming so much it let him go. He wasn't high enough off the ground to hurt the kid, but there was a case where a Thunderbird had attempted to take a child, but they may kill people all the time. We have no idea. Hunters out in the woods. Well, what happened to Joe? He disappeared. Well, maybe a Thunderbird got him.
Or a Bigfoot. But, I got to tell you.
Or a Bigfoot.
Yeah, Jason, when I was a little kid, my grandmother was born in the Ukraine. Her great-grandfather brought the Mennonite church into the Dakotas back in the 1800s and stuff. Or great-grandfather, whatever. Anyway, when I was a little kid, my grandmother would tell me stories like these big birds, bigger than eagles, would kind of sweep down and like little babies, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, would just grab it and fly off with them, and that would be the end of them.
That's horrible.
It is. Now, I don't know if it would be a bald eagle or eagles would have that much, capability of doing it. I know they can take small cats and dogs, but, like a baby, it weighs like 8, 9, 10 pounds or a little bit older. I mean, that they would have a big wingspan.
They would, and bald eagles, I've been up fairly close to one that was in captivity. I would not want to be up that close to one in the wild, but those are large birds. I could see. I mean, they pick up rabbits. They pick up. They can pick up things larger. So I mean, I could see them maybe picking up something that size.
Well, I believe it. Why,
terrifying.
Where I live here at the harbor, Gig Harbor, Washington. This year, well, since this summer I haven't been out because of my injuries, but till my one dog passed, it was like a mixture of toy poodle and a mongrel, and we had to go out there, and stay with it while it was doing its business because there was a huge eagle, because I have almost 2 acres of cedar trees. And you would see that eagle, just, flying around eyeing the dogs, just waiting, to fly down and swoop and get it. A small dog or a small animal like that, like you said, a rabbit, they have no chance. But you think about a baby and stuff like that. And if you actually go back even to, where the settlers were coming into this country, the farmers and stuff going back there, they would talk about these giant birds, sweeping down and and taking babies. The same like with Indians talk about it too. The various tribes, like the Muckleshoot tribe up here in Washington State, talked about giant birds taking, the babies and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, that was one of the dangers, and why we have legends of these enormous beasts. That's why we had werewolf legends from France and other countries in Europe, because wolves were a problem. So they were demonized even more by being in league with the devil whenever werewolves came about. Things we can come up, human beings can come up with justifications for anything. Were there animals big enough, or birds big enough to steal the baby? Yeah, maybe there weren't, but again, like I said, there are a lot of places in this world, I think, where creatures that we think are extinct may still be hanging around. And something else that you mentioned about interdimensional monsters, that's always a possibility. However, I'm probably one of the few cryptid guys out there who still thinks that Bigfoot's probably a flesh and blood animal.
I don't know, honestly, what Bigfoot is. I can only go from my experience. All I saw was something that was big, it was heavy, it made the loudest scream in the world, and it chased me. And now, again, maybe it was a deserter during the Vietnam era that grew its hair long and had long body hair and was dirty. I don't know. But I can honestly tell you this, looking back at it, I was never so scared. And that tells me, all these people I know by doing these shows for years, going out. Back in the, I would say, late 90s, mid-90s, there were so many groups in Washington that was out looking for Bigfoot. And they would always find evidence, but they would never see one. But again, you hit it on earlier. If you go out with a group of people, you're not going to see it because they're going to hear you. And certainly when you get more than one or two people with you, they're going to make noise. So, I mean, and then you hear these like knocks for like Bigfoot example. People hear, how do you know there's not another hunter out there looking for Bigfoot banging on a tree? And so you bang back and they bang back and both of you guys are thinking you're hearing a Bigfoot.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you don't actually see the animal, how do you know? You really, really don't. And there are people who say that they hear Bigfoot mimicking human speech. Well, how come? Why are you immediately, going that way instead of, like you said, other hunters out there?
Well, that is
maybe thinking that they're talking to a Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah. The ones I hear, the ones that, play back or I've had on my show that actually had like Bigfoot's like, talking, like sounds like Japanese. Again, I've had a couple of Bigfoot hunters, and one of them is very noted, was talking about how they can imitate sounds. Like he was out in the middle of a camp way where he had to pack in with mules, for example. And they would be in their tent at night and hear like a car door or a trunk, open and close and slam. And weird noises like that. I don't even know how Bigfoot could actually even mimic hearing what a opening and slamming a trunk, but I don't know.
That's interesting. I've heard people say that they Bigfoot can imitate not just people but lots of different types of animals, but not the car door. That's actually kind of funny.
Yeah, that's coming from Ron Moorhead. So I mean.
All right, but then again, he was there. I wasn't. I wasn't there to hear that. Bigfoot's one of my favorites to talk about because to me, it seems so simple, but it's also so mysterious. Right off the bat, people like Dr. Grover Krantz thought that flesh and blood animal, that it was a giant North American ape. Probably Gigantopithecus that came over on the land bridge. But that to me, that makes a lot of logical sense. However, looking at the evidence for Bigfoot, that it doesn't fit all of it, because there are a lot of witnesses who said Bigfoot looks like an ape. I've seen it. I saw the face. It looked like an ape. Then there are also people who say, "There's a Bigfoot. I saw it, and its face looked like a man's. It looked like a human face."
Well,
Then there. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying maybe, there's been also a report of the hairy man. And, we don't know if that is